Like to call the meeting to order, please. Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Jim Bolt, and I'll be your chair tonight. This is the 14th meeting in 2024. I'd like to, at the very top of the meeting, before we discuss anything, take this opportunity to wish Michael a very happy birthday. Michael's happy birthday, Michael. I'd like an adoption of our agenda and amendments, if there are any, by Councillor Bird, please.
Thank you, Chair. Moved by myself that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting of October the 8th, 2024 be adopted as presented.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Remind council, as always, that if you have a conflict of interest of a pecuniary nature at any time through the meeting, please disclose it. And does anyone have any pecuniary interests to disclose ahead of the meeting? Seeing none, so just again, if you feel you have a pecuniary interest, please disclose it when the time arises. We have no public meetings under the Planning Act scheduled. So we'll move on to item number 5, adoption of minutes, again by Councillor Smith.
I move that the minutes of the special committee of the whole meeting held on September 10th, 2024, and the regular committee of the whole meeting held on September 10th, 2024 be approved.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we're going to move right into our delegations. We have 3 delegations tonight. I'd like to remind our delegations that we do have 10 minutes to present what you have. If it takes less, that's fine as well. And there will be a section at the end of each delegation for questions, if any. Our first delegation, I'd like to welcome Michael Cohen, President and CEO of the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital, for an update. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. We need to push this to go on, or?
No, it's on all the time.
On all the time, great.
Just gotta be close to it.
Fairly close.
Good, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, all right, well, thank you very much to council and for inviting me to speak. It's always great to meet with our local representatives and talk about the support that you give to the hospital. It's, I can't tell you how much I appreciate, and our staff and physicians appreciate the support of the local municipality. It's very important to us, so thank you for tonight. Mike, are you doing the slide, or am I doing? Yeah. So we're into now year 2 of our strategic plan, and as I may have reported to you last year, this is a lot of good words. For us, action is the most important. So if you go to the next slide, Mike, one of the things that we identified at the hospital is that we had we needed to really focus on quality and safety. And one of the big projects we did last year in terms of our success is reduce injuries falls. So when I started at the hospital back in the late 2021, we actually had several deaths linked to injurious falls. So we got together, we developed a plan, and we actually not only reduced the rate of falls, but brought it down below what would be expected as the best practice, best benchmark for hospitals in our class. We looked at our OR efficiency and patient flow. We spent a lot of time on empowering and working with our staff. We've invested over 2.5 million on infrastructure, not including our MRI. And intentionally this year, our plans have been very narrowly focused on our big project, which is our digital transformation, which I'll talk to you about. And that's where your support of our core capital campaign is so vital to promote quality and safety here in our region. Next slide. So just in terms of general state of the nation, we are seeing a very high, even now it's early in the flu season, cases of pneumonia and the flu are actually very high at the hospital. Luckily, the morbidity or the severity of illness and mortality is not what it was during the pandemic, but it's still very serious. So get your flu shot if you haven't got it. And but it's upon us, and so you will see the hospital in surge. So here in Perth, we've created appropriate clinical spaces to flex or our bed capacity and respond to that volume in an appropriate way. The lack of long-term care in our sector is still having a pretty big impact on bed availability, where these are people that are supposed to be out of the hospital and into long-term care. But unfortunately, the availability of beds in that sector is still very limited, meaning that we're caring for more people than we should. So bear with us, we are busy, but we're here to help. Next slide. In spite of the human health resource crisis, I'm proud to say that we filled all of our permanent full-time nursing positions. Obviously, going back to the ER closure of 2022, we were in a very precarious position, and we still have positions open for things like mat leave or part-time, but we've got now 100% homegrown, 100% full-time nurses filled, which is a big achievement. We've also, even though we've had some temporary challenges with our maternal newborn, we have hired our first full-time midwife, and she's practicing currently, and we're actually looking to recruit a second one, which is great service to offer here in the community, previously only available at other hospitals. Next slide. And the core capital campaign, this is where we work with our municipalities as one of the sole sources of funding for our digital transformation project. Now, we're actually working right now towards the end of the fall, early winter, to go live with this project. It will be paid for, which is why we need your continued support. But this is where we're working to improve quality and safety through standardization and best practices using digital tools. Okay, we're working, as I may have reported in previous years, with 6 other hospitals in the former Southeast Lynn. And even though we're very excited about this project, it isn't innovative. We're probably last of a handful of probably less than 10 hospitals in the province that have not yet transitioned to a fully electronic platform. So it's high time that we've actually achieved this. Next slide. This is all about safety and quality, but I can tell you, even on the administrative side, we don't talk about this a lot, but even from an efficiency and patient flow in this new environment, our fully electronic system will have our housekeepers, for example, holding handhelds to be able to get instructions about what bed to clean first, second, third, and be able to communicate back to our electronic bed board when those rooms are clear, making the emergency department and our admitting staff aware of when it's time to move patients up. In addition to improving quality and safety by reducing error and standardizing best practices, how we're going to be joining the times to improve quality and safety at our hospital. Next slide. So I've spoken to most of this, but I can tell you, having been through this before at a previous hospital, there are things, for example, that are called medication discrepancies, which are like precursors to medication errors. A physician writes a handwritten note, hands it to the doctor, doctor hands it to the nurse reads it, misunderstands it, misrepresents it, orders the wrong medication, wrong dose. That's called discrepancy. We went from having, 4 discrepancies per 1,000, so that's a lot. There's like thousands of medication errors to 0 through the electronic orders and validation by essentially computers and robots, as well as scanners that validate the patient and the right dose before the administration. So this is one of the key benefits of this system, in addition to some administrative benefits that we get. I will say, at the current time, our staff and physician are used to using paper. This is going to be a monumental change. We've invested a lot of the money that you generously support us with, not just in the software, the servers, and the technology, but the training support. On go live, and probably for at least 6 to 8 weeks following that go live, it will be slower. And that's why we have people on the premises 24/7 and staffing up to ensure that staff, physicians, volunteers are supported through this change. Next slide, please. This is just a picture, so you can see, if you've been in the hospital, this is from our first center. You can see some of the benefits of the technology that your funds have helped us support. On the right is a bunch of nurses, maybe with somewhat strained smiles. They just completed one of the training modules here on one of our workstation or mouse, which comes complete with a scanner. And on the left is another nurse up on our 3rd floor in Perth. I'm holding a handheld label maker. This gets used to make armbands and put labels that can be scanned on blood work and medications. Next slide. This is a better view of some of the technology. So those little carts are computers, scanners, and the ones that you can see very clearly on the left-hand side actually contain medication cabinets where they can get loaded up with patient meds. When they get to the right room, the right bin pops open, they grab the meds, which are already pre-packaged by a robot, and have the barcode on them that can be scanned to ensure right dose, right patient, ultimate patient safety. So this is Your, in part, the funds for your municipality are the ones that support our campaign, evidence of what we've done with the funds. And as I said, the project will be complete later on the fall, early December. So last slide. I just want to thank you. I can't tell you how much it means to receive the support. We couldn't do this without you. And thank you very much for the dollars that you have funneled to support us. And I would strongly encourage you to continue that support as we move to the completion of this project. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Michael, and before you take any questions, I just wanted, on behalf of council, thank you for your presentation and tell you how much support you give to us and what it means to us as one of the many aging people in our community. I know how important the hospital is to me, as well as the young people. We all have emergencies and so on, and they do an absolutely top-notch job at both campuses, so keep up the good work. Questions for Michael? Mayor Brown.
It's my goal to learn to talk as loud as you so everybody can hear me.
That would be great.
That's a compliment. So my question is, you mentioned in the report about your have a full staff of registered nurses. But there's also a shortage of doctors, and I wondered if you could tell us, what actions being taken so that there are more doctors in Ontario.
So we wouldn't be in charge of the more doctors in Ontario part of your question, but in terms of making sure we have continuity of services at the hospital, it's something that we're working very closely with our medical staff and our medical advisory committee. Our biggest pinch points in terms of personnel right now are with obstetricians and anesthetists. So unfortunately, we recently lost an obstetrician whose husband relocated due to a work employment issue to Toronto. And so we're in the process of recruiting we should be a 3-Rec 1+1 midwife. So we're at risk there. Anesthetist is one of the areas also where there is some sensitivity, and I'm proud to say that we're at our full complement. We're always looking, and we provide a variety of incentives and recruitment options to ensure that we're in supply of the rest of the hospital personnel that we need on the physician side. But there's a worldwide shortage right now, particularly of obstetricians, and it is challenging to be able to attract an obstetrician to a smaller community, which is why we have incentives in place to try and attract as many as we can.
Comment, being council's representative on the board of directors of the hospital. I'm well aware of the financial position you're in, and I would speak in favor of us continuing the $97,711 that we contributed last year. I'll speak to that in our budget process.
Thank you very much for that support.
Councilmember Craig.
Thank you very much, Chair, to you, to Michael. On the strategic plan, and you mentioned this, you highlighted this, reducing injuries falls by over 35%. So my question to you is, when they do have a fall and they do go into, a patient does go into your hospital and they have to be admitted, before they leave, are they referred to anywhere in the community where we are teaching our older groups of people fall prevention? Where exactly in this community now are people able to get that? Because with an aging population, we're going to see more and more falls.
So what I can tell you is the hospital focuses on fall prevention within the hospital. So in terms of outreach and support, we don't currently provide that service. So that would be something that I would look to home and community care services for, would be the experts in that. What we do is we have a variety of things that we do within the hospital to reduce or prevent the fall in terms of our fall prevention strategy. But unfortunately, it kind of it's focused on the acute care hospital, not on so much transition into either their home or a long-term care center.
Okay, thank you.
You're right.
It's a matter of information, attending the seniors information center last Wednesday. They had one of the chiropractors was a speaker, and she made a point of saying that as you get older, you have problems with balance, and that's one of the reasons that people fall. So I know that there is someone at one of the chiropractors who does simply matter doing exercises and so pursue that with you if you like.
Thank you. All right, so I see no other questions. So again, Michael, thank you for your presentation and thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Mayor Brown, there's a motion for you to be read, with respect to this.
As recommended by the committee of the whole, be it resolved that the council of the town of Perth receive for information the delegation from Michael Cohen, President and CEO, Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital, as presented at the committee of the whole meeting, October the 8th, 2024.
Discussion, if any. Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried unanimously. So we'll move on to 6.2, our second presentation. I'd like to call Brody Berrigan, Chair of the Climate Change Advisory Panel, to give us an update. Welcome, Brody.
Thank you, Chair. Okay,
Got 10 minutes, starting when you start.
great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Brody Berrigan, as you said, and I am the recent chair of the Climate Change Advisory Panel. I do want to thank our former chair, Mayor Judy Brown, who has done a lot of excellent work to bring the committee to the point where we are right now. So thank you, Mayor, for that. I'd also like to acknowledge the members of the advisory panel. So we have Mayor Judy Brown, Councillor Barry Smith, as well as our co-chair Kirsten Browse, who's here with us tonight in the audience actually, and Hillary Hodgins, Jim McDougall, and Bria Scott. I do want to stress that outside of our two very committed elected members and the staff whose time and dedication we very much appreciate, it is a voluntary-based organization. I think that's important to know. And I'd like to very much take this opportunity to thank my fellow CCA PIM members for their time and dedication that they've put towards this issue over the past several months. Next slide, please. My goal here tonight is to provide an overview of our work, including results achieved against our work plan objectives, and to address any questions that you might have or any input that council may have in terms of our priorities and direction as we look towards developing our work plan in 2025. There is one item that I will pause on because it will change a bit how climate implications are presented to council in staff reports, the implementation of a new climate lens. So I will spend a bit more time on that, noting that we included some slides in an annex that I hope you've had a chance to take a look at. Next slide, please. Just quickly in terms of a recap, because for most of you, it has been a whole year since we last connected on this topic. Last year, this committee, council approved an extension of the mandate of the CCAP to the end of the current council term. And at the time, I told you that some of our immediate next steps would be to continue advancing our work plan priorities, including support of greater alignment with Lanark County Climate Action Plan, advancing initiatives outlined in PERT's strategic plan, including the implementation of the climate plans, identifying new grant and funding opportunities, continuing to raise awareness in the community, and conducting outreach to other municipal climate committees and community stakeholders to identify partnership opportunities. Next slide, please. In terms of our work plan objectives for this year, for 2024, which is of course quickly drawing to a close, we set out to advance a series of priorities under 4 themes, which are outlined on this slide: building green partnerships with other levels of government and community stakeholders, greening operations at the town of Perth, supporting community-based initiatives, and raising public awareness. I won't go through the list in detail, other than to note that while some of these items are one-off priorities, such as, for example, supporting the development of an adaptation plan, which we're still working on, others are ongoing initiatives that you will likely see carried over from year to year, such as supporting the Green Scene Communications. And I certainly want to give a shout out here also to Kathy and Crystal and her team for all of the support and effort that they've been doing on that front. So thanks very much. In terms of results, so next slide, please. So far this year, because I do want to focus on that. There's a few that I wanted to highlight. First, we've really invested a lot of energy into strengthening our linkages with the county on climate-related issues. This includes building closer ties at the staff level within the county, but also by actively participating in Lanark's climate-related planning activities, like a recent adaptation workshop that we attended. This is important not only because Earth activities fall within the scope of Lanark's climate action plan, but because we want to both leverage the work that they are doing in this area to support our own efforts, and we want Perth to have a strong voice around Lanark's climate action working group. And I do want to acknowledge the work that both Mayor Brown and Councillor McRae are doing on that front. Second, I want to highlight two ongoing community-based initiatives, which are important to raise awareness and improve our community. The first is we successfully held our third annual Trasher Hunt Community Cleanup Day this year, where volunteers collected nearly 800 pounds of garbage. And second, we supported the reuse center at the Town of Perth landfill site. I hope that many of you are familiar with that. It's just on the right-hand side as you drive in to the landfill site. Finally, as mentioned in the intro, I did want to pause for a moment, and I'll do that now, on the work that the CCAP has done to develop a new climate lens for the Town of Perth. You can find more information in the annex, but I'm just going to walk through a couple things here now. Climate lens, as I'm sure you're aware, is an approach used by municipalities to assess the policies, plans, projects, and decisions through the lens of climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Climate lens does not impose decision-making. I want to be very clear about that. It just acknowledges the impact of the decision, whether it's positive or negative. And it's really about making more informed decisions. We developed a more robust climate lens that the town can use to inform staff reports to council that's based on two elements. There's a qualitative element and a quantitative element. The qualitative element is just a set of questions. And they aren't outlined in the annex, but it's aimed at teasing out the climate implications of a potential new development project or acquisition or whatever. Those questions are, will the initiative result in direct climate impact like greenhouse gas emissions? Were there mitigation measures or alternatives that were considered? What are the short and long-term financial consequences of this decision? Are there any indirect impacts such as health and safety, for example? And does the initiative align with Lanark County's climate action plan? The quantitative tool, the data tool, was developed by a volunteer, a former consultant, and Bob Arcu, who originally contributed to Lanark's or Perth's original climate action plan. And it's really a tool, an Excel tool that generates estimates of emissions in different scenarios. So different scenarios of home heating, for example, oil versus electric versus natural gas. It can provide estimates of different emissions linked to different fuel sources. So fuel, traditional sort of gasoline fuel versus an electric vehicle. Recycling savings, savings on an LED light bulb in a house or no idling, etc. And it's based on several basic emission factors for fuel and waste, which are based on government sources here in Canada and the US, and we've shared that information with staff, so they've had a chance to look at all the sources and assumptions associated with that. I do want to be clear that this tool was not meant to provide a precise figure of greenhouse gas emission impacts. Rather, it's designed to assist staff in quantifying at a high level estimates of greenhouse gas impacts in various scenarios. It's a tool, it's not a crystal ball. You will have already seen the new climate lens put into action, at least on a pilot basis, in a recent council decision linked to the purchase of an electric ice resurfacer. So the staff were able to use the information generated from that climate lens to quantify the reduced emissions and operating costs over time associated with that electric model. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps for the CCAP, there are several outstanding commitments in our work plan that will carry over to 2025. But in terms of driving focus for our work, because really the temptation is always to do everything that you can, and we get a lot of solicitations. We really do plan to continue building closer alignment with Lanark County to support the implementation of their action plan, completing our own Town of Perth corporate climate action plan, which really amounts to updating our emissions inventory, and we'll be recommending some corporate emissions reduction targets associated with that. Continuing to explore opportunities to recommend enhancements to the town's biodiversity and tree canopy, and exploring options to expand the use of full life cycle costing methodologies to all major asset and procurement decisions, which is an approach that I know other municipalities in Lanark are currently using. Finally, in terms of key messages, I just wanted to reiterate, and it's up on the slide, that we plan to remain focused on our core priorities, leverage partnerships where it makes sense to, continue to raise awareness and support evidence-based advice to council. And we understand that this table makes decisions, so we're there to ensure that you have the best possible information to do that. So that was my update for this evening. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, including the climate plans, I'm very happy to speak to those. Thank you.
All right, so questions for Brody? You're just going like this? Your worship.
So people's attitudes towards climate change seem to run the whole gamut from people that don't really believe in it to people like, the Climate Change Advisory Committee that's, struggling to do the best to reduce carbon emissions and, buy vehicles that are more expensive but do reduce carbon emissions. I guess what I'm leading to is that, we look at the news and it's all, your Hurricane Milton, which is a climate event that I don't think you could possibly adequately prepare for this. I'm just wondering, and I need to spring something on you that wasn't really in your report, but how do you feel about that storms that are getting ever larger and more destructive, how could you prepare for something like that?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Brown. A couple of things on that I would say. I think that we have experienced an increasing incidence of extreme weather events, and we've seen it here in Perth, and municipalities are experiencing it across the country. So I think in many ways this has elevated and mainstreamed the sort of climate environment related conversations. I know that issues around climate change often get politicized, and I think that's unfortunate. What we're really trying to do is raise awareness about those potential impacts. And one of the issues that we undertook this year as part of our work plan was to raise awareness as part of Emergency Preparedness Week and partnered with Trevor and the Perth Fire Service actually to pay for and then distribute a number of emergency preparedness kits, as you know. So it was kind of a dual win in the sense that we were able to raise awareness around emergency preparedness in light of potential, emergency events like that. And actually help prepare some community members around, what should be included in an emergency preparedness kits, and then we gave out 5 from the budget.
I don't think if you were told to evacuate within a half hour, it's not a good time to decide what you need to take with you.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that, if I could, is one of the projects that I know, we're working on. Brian and I have had a number of conversations about this, and we brought a few presentations to the Climate Change Advisory Panel. But it's the development of an adaptation plan for the town of Perth, which is a very, very important product. I know Lanark is working on their adaptation plan. We're working on ours in Perth, and we'd like to see that come forward within the coming weeks and months as well. But that is an important tool because it really kind of gets everybody on the same page, from your staff, emergency management personnel, the hospitals, everybody on the same page in terms of how you're going to prepare for and adapt to those types of emergency situations. So that will be something that I'm sure will be coming back to this council in the future.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Bird.
Thank you, through the chair. If I could just focus on one part, which is mitigation resilience. Because it is a factor in other areas of operation of the town. And I always hate to see people working in silos when they're working on the same sort of principles or indeed almost the same project. It's part of the asset management plan that we're supposed to have some forward thinking on how we maintain our assets. On that subject, has the Climate Change Committee ever thought about considering advocating on behalf of a relatively new concept of natural assets belonging to municipalities? In this case, in our case, it would be wetlands, floodplain areas, and the maintenance of permeable surfaces. Because as you pointed out, and as the mayor pointed out, we've seen numerous examples of municipalities that have lost their permeable surfaces and are flooding.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think that's ultimately an issue that would need to be discussed with staff. It's very much an operational sort of issue. What I will say is, we have identified as a priority, ensuring that we support and enhance the biodiversity and tree canopy within the town limits, from CCAP's perspective. And we have made a request, and I think we have on our forward agenda to get a presentation from staff around the current policies, strategy plan with respect to enhancing our biodiversity and tree canopy. And so what we would like to do is have a discussion around the CCAP table around how we're actually promoting those objectives. And I do appreciate the comment, Councillor, around, wanting to ensure that we're not working in silos on these various issues. So part of my objective at that conversation, when we do have it around the CCAP table, will be very much, okay, well, what is the town of Perth's overall strategy in this area, including its asset management strategy? Because I do believe that trees, and Michael and I have had this conversation before as well, are, will be, or maybe, considered assets within our actual asset management plan, which is great. I mean, that's a really important step forward, I think, in that respect. So I think there is a space now to have that conversation where maybe previously there wasn't. With respect to watersheds, wetlands, that's a complicated issue that I think has a number of implications that cross jurisdictional boundaries. So, I think we would need to have a discussion with, the conservation authorities and those sorts of jurisdictions that might have more influence and authority over decisions related to it, like the Tay River, for example. But I think if we could at least start with that tree canopy within our actual jurisdiction and our biodiversity within our actual jurisdiction that we do have authority for, that would be a good place to start. Anyway, that's my perspective on that issue. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Waterfield.
Through the chair to Brody, just a comment. I think one aspect of emergency preparedness, which is critical, is the ability of the town to deal with emergencies that happen close to each other. And that has human resources implications. It has infrastructure implications and so on and so forth. Because we just need to look at Florida. They've had one hurricane after another. And it's one thing to have an emergency plan to say if something happens, we can deal with it. What happens if it happens the next week again? And these multiple frequent incidents are happening more and more all over the world. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Councilor McRae.
Thank you, Chair. To Brody. So, I'm looking at your 2024 work plan objectives. And I'm sure you'll be working on 2025. And they're very robust objectives in a very cash-strapped economy. And I just wondered, in terms of under greening operations, identifying grants and funding opportunities, what have you been able to find in that specific area?
So that's a really good question, and I would 100% validate that comment around, identifying a source of funds to implement our objectives is not always easy. What I will say is, up to this point, we've been very lucky to focus on priority areas that don't have a huge price tag associated with them. So a lot of raising awareness in the community, communications, et cetera. The community initiatives have very marginal at best sort of price tags, and we've been managed to stay well within our budget within the last 2 years. In terms of grant opportunities on the horizon, there is one actually that we're currently focused on. It's an Enbridge municipal climate grant, where they reimburse municipalities for up to 50% of the costs associated with implementing climate-related initiatives, including climate action plans. So we're actually proposing to get 50% of our funding that will be required to support the update of our kind of corporate emissions plan, reimbursed by Enbridge through that municipal grant. And we have identified an individual within our CCAP team who is a bit of a lead in doing some research on an ongoing basis to identify additional grant opportunities as they emerge. And it doesn't hurt that our co-chair of the CCAP certainly happens to come from the work in the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which has quite a bit of grant opportunities and funding streams available to it. Hint, hint, Kirsten. So we're certainly taking advantage of those connections to try and ensure that there isn't a big impact on the town of Perth's budget when it comes to a lot of other plans.
All right. I don't see any other, I do see one more question, Councillor
It's
Smith.
not a question, just a comment. I just wanted to thank Brody for the, not only the presentation tonight, but for your leadership and all that you input to the CCAP. And also to Kirsten, who's new, relatively new, but we look for great things from Kirsten as well. And on that note, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth received for information the delegation from Brody Berrigan, Chair, Climate Change Advisory Panel, as presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting October 8th, 2024.
Questions, if any? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Again, Brody, thank you for your very informative presentation.
Thank you.
We move now to 6.3, and we would ask that Marilyn Bird, board member, and Joellen McCart, Executive Director of Leonard County Community Justice, to come forward. Welcome, ladies. You have the floor.
Thank you. It's been a long time since community justice has been at this circle of 2021, and I don't know if anybody was here, but I showed up in a polar bear costume. I'm really glad not to be in that. Was from the polar bear fund when we were talking about that. So my name is Joellen McCart. I'm the Executive Director of Leonard County Community Justice. We've been around for over 24 years. Located in Perth, but we serve all of Leonard County and the town of Sioux Falls, and our mission is to provide and promote the community use of restorative practices, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. My lovely co-worker, boss, Marilyn Bird, board member, is here with us today, and she's also going to share some of her perspective on why she thinks this is an organization she wants to be part of, and hopefully you do as well. We have yeah. We have a few programs. Oh, we tell you? Okay. We have, and I'm really gonna focus today just on our court diversion program. So we have our restorative parenting program where we provide support to parents and education sessions about how to support teens. I actually took the course, even though I'm the ED. I have 2 teenagers. It was really helpful. If you know a parent who's struggling to parent a teen or want some tips, tell them we're running a course in November. Our restorative families program, so this is providing some ongoing support to families who are struggling outside of issues with the criminal justice system. And then we have restorative practice educators training. So training for educators to use restorative practices in their classroom to resolve conflict, to build relationship. And you have a brochure on that, or on all these programs, so you can read more about that or go to our website. But let's just, because I have limited time, focus on, court diversion program. So what happens is we've received referrals from the police as pre-charges or from the Crown Attorney's Office as post-charges. And so a harm has occurred, a crime has occurred, there's grounds to lay a charge. And then most of our cases are youth. I would say 75% of our cases are youth. I think, yeah, it says 75. And 25% are adults, but I will qualify that the adults are mostly young adults. They're usually between 18 and 29. That's not to say that we haven't had 85-year-olds, come. We just had, somebody who was quite elderly, come to us as a client. So the age does vary. Next slide. The restorative process. So when the case comes to us, a big thing, the first thing we do is contact the accused, the offender, and find out, are they willing to be held accountable for their actions? Because we're not gonna take them if they're disputing the charges. We're not gonna take them if they haven't said, yes, I did this and I wanna make it right. We explain the whole process to them and we kind of feel them out, ask them a lot of intake question, there's like a 10-page questionnaire finding information about them. And if we feel they're ready for the program, then we contact the victim. We spend a lot of time talking with the victim or victims, telling them about our program, how it works. And our goal is to bring, and we find out who else is impacted, because we all know that crime, there's the accused, there's the victim, but then sometimes there's the parents, there's the vice principal, there's the school, there's the community, there's the town employee who has to clean up all the graffiti. So we find out who all was impacted, what the impact was. And then hopefully we can bring everybody together to have a conversation about what happened and how to make it right. Before we do that, we sign facilitators. So every single person who participates in that forum is met one-on-one. We go through the expectation of what they can think will happen at a forum, what they want to say, what we'll be asking of them, what their expectations are. So that can take it can be a lengthy process if you have 15 people in a forum. It is volunteers that do this work. And they are amazing people from this community and other communities in Lander County. Our volunteers are exceptional. And they are really dedicated to this service because they've seen the magic of it and how it works. So the case is assigned to a lead, a co-facilitator, and observer. And it probably, before you become a lead, it takes about 2 years to 3 years to become a lead facilitator. So there's training and mentorship and observation and evaluation, and eventually they become a lead facilitator. And we just take a lot of time to prepare for the forum. Next slide, please. And then what happens at a forum? Every forum is different from the previous forum. But key to that is we're asking restorative questions, and you all have a card here with the restorative questions. Try it out. If you're having a challenge or a conflict with someone, try these questions. So you're asking what happened, who was harmed, what were you thinking about at the time, and what have you thought about since? And you're asking these questions with an open mind to hear the answers, right? You're curious, you're using a curious mindset. And so we asked everybody these different versions of these questions. Every single person who participates in the forum gets asked it. And then they get to say, you know what? You started that fire in that bin, and we want you to go and take this TAPC fire prevention course. And that gets put into the agreement. But you also threw in your friend's cell phone, so now you need to pay them back. You need to give them $300 every month for the next 3 months for that cell phone on this date. And then, you know what, we feel that one of the reasons you were doing this is you were drinking. So we want you to have an addiction assessment and go to that, and it has to happen by this date. And if the person does all those things, then the result is the police will not lay the charges, or the crown attorney will withdraw or stay the charges, right? We're very particular about the types. Usually, we're very creative, and the people who participate are very creative that the impact of the crime or the sanctions, or what's gonna be done to repair it is connected to what harm was caused. So that's next one, yeah.
So the reason why I volunteer on the board is through my work as a police officer, I became very aware that our traditional justice system just does not work. It's a waste of money and it actually harms the victim in the process. So our courts are not efficient. There's a huge waste of time and resources. So a traditional charge for the traditional system costs thousands of dollars, and we take a case and it costs approximately $2,000. The accused has no criminal record or has no criminal record. And the effects of a criminal record can affect your employment opportunities. It can affect where you rent. It can affect whether you get into a certain course of study. So that's huge. But more importantly, it gives the offender the opportunity to apologize to the victim and to seek reconciliation and forgiveness. And I have worked with accused people who wanted to reach out to the victim and say, I am sorry for what happened, but our traditional justice system discourages that. It cannot happen. And then for survivors and victims, our traditional justice system, I think, harms them in the fact that they do not have a voice in the process. Many charges, when there's a not guilty plea, will result in a plea deal, and the victim has many times does not even agree with the outcome and certainly has no process in that. Even when an accused person is found guilty, victims feel the sentence is insufficient. Again, because they've not had any role in the process. They feel they have not been heard. Next. So this gives you some idea of the type of cases that are referred to us. One thing I want to mention is that in recent years, the seriousness of the type of offenses has been increasing. In particular, we are dealing with incidents of graffiti and harassment related to racism, homophobic, and Islamophobia. Next slide. So here you can see some more of our statistics, and the most important thing is the satisfaction of restorative justice compared to the traditional justice system. Next, please. So we are expected from the province to do more with less money. Our results, our statistics are not dependent, have no correlation with the amount of funding we receive. And in recent years, we have actually received less funding from the province. Next slide, please. You can see here our staff are underpaid. They do not receive competitive salaries, and we rely on volunteers to be able to complete our work. Next slide. So lastly, how can you help? Now, unfortunately, we do not qualify to apply for your community grants program. And I know that there are so many competing needs within the community when you go through your budget process. We had 4 referrals, 4 cases from Perth. Each case cost approximately $2,000. So as you enter into your budget process, if there is any room there for some minor consideration for our program, it would be much appreciated. More importantly, please preach, become believers in restorative justice and preach its benefits. If you hear of anyone in conflict, not necessarily the law, it could be neighbors, please make a recommendation to our program. Thank you.
Any questions? You're up.
So one of the things I've done since I became mayor is to go around and visit critical organizations in town, everything from the industries to stores downtown and to organizations like yours. So I went to their fundraising golf course a couple of weeks ago, and Joellen introduced herself and spent much of the rest of the night pumping her for information. I guess the most critical thing that struck me was the recidivism rate. It's neat that it's only 7% if someone goes through the community justice system, but it's in the 20 to 30% more people who go through the traditional court system. And it brings about a change in attitude. If you go through community justice, it enables people to realize the effect of what they've done and the impact that it had on the victim. Whereas the traditional system just says, you know, you're getting slapped on the hand, don't do it again. So what this is leading to is that, as been mentioned, the organization is grossly underfunded. So, yeah, I will speak strongly to this at budget time, and also I'm willing to contribute to the organization from the mayor's discretionary fund.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, Councilor Waterfield.
Through the chair, thank you for your presentation. I think your organization is amazing. And the statistics show that for any clients that go through your program, just the reduction in terms of reoffense. The question I had was, do you ever get any clients that experience your program for a second time? And how does that change the conversation?
As you know, we're dealing with teenagers.
I was one once.
And they don't necessarily learn their lesson the very first time, but also then a lot of them come from really challenged households, either economic, education, socially, not a lot of support, so we do get reoffenses for sure. And it is allowed under the Youth Criminal Justice Act to refer someone to diversion more than once. I think they come prepared knowing what to expect more than they did the first time. Often it's for a different type of offense, and maybe some circumstance has changed in their life and they're in need of maybe more addiction support or connection with mental health services. Maybe there's a medical issue that didn't exist before that's there now that we can address. So we look at it as another opportunity to expand the circle of care and make sure that that family and those kids are getting the support they need so that they don't offend. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Well, Marilyn and Joellen, thank you very much for your presentation. I just wanted to end it by saying that I, a number of years ago, was indirectly impacted by a certain youth that got into some trouble. And through your program, I saw the amazing benefits of how it worked. And it made me realize just how, as you alluded to, Marilyn, how much of a negative impact it can have on a young person going forward in life with a criminal record. So keep up your good work and fight the good fight. And thank you once again for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. On that note, could we have a motion from Councillor McCray?
Thank you. As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the delegation from Marilyn Bird, Board Member, and Joellen McCard, Executive Director of Lyman County Community Justice, as presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting October the 8th, 2024.
Questions of any?
Just,
Your Worship?
I wanted to see that this was considered during the budget process. Is that motion enough, or how would they go about doing that?
See, the ordinance, you answer that question.
Like, through the chair, you can either bring that up at budget time, just like the hospital request, or you can make an amendment to the motion tonight if you'd like.
I think you just remember to bring it up at budget time as a line item.
Thank you. All right, then I'm going to.
All right, call the question, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Where's Barnes? Okay, 7.1, this is for information purposes only. We have information from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And we would like Councillor Byrd to make a recommendation for that one.
Certainly. As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of Town of Perth receive for information the correspondence from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing related to the 2023 Financial Information Return, FIR, award.
Comments? Deputy Mayor?
Just want to say congratulations to Brian and his team. We all know Brian's the number guy, and that's quite an award and recognition we receive. And I know there's several municipalities in the near area that all are in the same group as Brian, but if you don't have a guy like Brian get you the numbers, you're not going to get that result. So hats off to Brian and his team.
Well done. Any comments, questions?
Sorry, just to jump on through the chair, the deputy mayor's point, I was at a county CEO's meeting last week, and not to throw any other municipality under the bus, and I think the auditors play a role in that as well. But some of our neighbors are still in the process of doing their year end for last year, and we received this award several weeks ago already, because we've had it in so early, so. Just to highlight how ahead of the curve that Brian and our staff works.
Sure.
Councillor Byrd?
Yes, I may through the chair, further to what has been said already, during the course of dealing with the independent auditor, I'm very happy that we've got an official recognition outside, because they have always expressed how swiftly our team responds and gets the information and prepares documentation. So I'm happy to see this.
Final comment?
Out of curiosity, what does one have to do in order to, be superior? Is it simply, doing the FRI to the best of the accounting, principles?
So, through the chair, for anybody that hasn't had the joy of going through the FIR, there's about 80 schedules that restate the financial performance of the municipality during the year, and the award is particularly, you have to be in, for us, the top 10. So we were the 8th municipality in the province to submit the FIR, the 444, and it has to go in, and it has to have no errors.
Wow.
So, fantastic.
Amazing.
It's a nice letter.
All right, call the question, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. So moving on to 7.2, correspondence, the request action is the letter of resignation from Laurie Tennant from the Heritage Perth Advisory Panel. I have a motion for Councillor Smith.
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Perth accept with regret the resignation of Laurie Tennant from the Heritage Perth Advisory Panel.
All in favor? That's carried unanimously. 7.2.2, Perth and District, Union Public Library letter of support to the Interior Government for provincial library funding, specifically for Perth and District Library. I have a motion to be read by Councillor Waterfield.
As recommended by myself, by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth support the Perth and District Union Public Library as follows. Whereas the provincial funding for public libraries is currently based on population levels from 25 years ago, which fails to reflect the substantial growth and changing needs of our communities, the Town of Perth wishes to draw your attention to the overdue report of 2023 from the Canadian Urban Libraries Council, which emphasizes the pivotal role libraries play in various aspects of community life, including knowledge distribution, culture, health, reconciliation, belonging, and our democracy. And whereas libraries situated at the heart of our communities serve as multifaceted institutions catering to diverse needs, they provide essential services such as access to culture and information, election information centers, job search facilities, language learning centers for newcomers, and spaces for educational and community events. Despite their vital role, public libraries in Ontario have not seen an increase in provincial funding for over 25 years, leading to a decrease in the value of the province's investment by over 60%. And whereas while over 90% of library funding comes from local municipal governments, provincial operating funding is crucial for providing stability to library budgets, especially in times of inflation, technological changes, and increasing demands on libraries as community hubs. And therefore, be it resolved that the town of Perth urges the provincial government to consider increasing provincial operating funding for Ontario's public libraries to address the critical shared priorities and community needs, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, and the Honourable John Jordan, Member of Provincial Parliament, Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Discussion, if any, your worship, then Councilor McCray.
Thank you. I was on the library board for 12 years back in the 90s, and we were underfunded then, and it looks like it's continued for 25 years. As the presentation points out, this is an extremely valuable asset to the community. Two of the ones that I can think of are a place to socialize and a place to get free information. It's odd that the provincial government underfunds two of the institutions most critical in our society and in our town. One is libraries, the other one is hospitals, which has a, I get the term right, deficit capital fund of $18 million. I've been chronically underfunded, so on that topic, I would certainly vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Councilor McCray.
Through your chair, I'm just wondering, has our library, the head of our library, thought at all of leveraging more support from other community libraries in Lanark County?
Through the chair in what way?
Bringing them aboard with letters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of these letters are going to all municipalities.
Okay. All over Ontario. Okay, good.
Councilor Bird and then Deputy Mayor.
I made through the chair. Libraries aren't what they were, the thing they were when I was growing up, and not even 25 years ago when funding was effectively frozen. The nature of what the library provides and what it is here in this town has to be considered in a different light to what it would have been back then. And it's going to be difficult for us moving forward as we think about funding and the difficulties we have through budget, etc. We'll have to look at it as from a different point of view, is what I'm saying, as to just a place where you collect books.
Deputy Mayor.
Has the library developed an ask that can be taken to Roma? And do you know if other two municipalities, are they bringing the same letter for their governments?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that they are. And that it's not only letters going to various municipalities, but also through Roma and through AMO.
But has the Perth District Leading Library themselves developed a plan to ask one of the three municipalities to go as their delegation to Roma?
I'm not specifically aware of that, but that's a good point. Do we know it?
Good point. Councilor McCray.
Yeah, the other suggestion I might have, Councillor Waterfield, is they consider the whole educational spectrum, all of the school boards.
Good point.
My only comment is that it never ceases to amaze me, and when you look back over the years at some of the most magnificent libraries that have been built by governments all around the world, and to think that we're having a funding crisis to keep them open and operational. We all know that we live in a world where, yeah, I can pick up this phone right here and I get more information off of this in 5 minutes than I ever could have gotten by going to the library and looking it up in the textbook. That's not what libraries are about anymore, and that's already been alluded to tonight, so. All right, comment to Councillor Waterfield.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment. I echo the comments and the queries of all my fellow members of council. The role of libraries are changing tremendously over the years, and I'm extremely proud of each and every member of the staff at our local library. They're providing absolutely exceptional service in a very changing environment and providing a lot more services than they ever did before under rather restricted financial conditions. So I think that we have to be proud of each and every member of our staff and this jewel we have called our library, which is just a couple of blocks down the road. I'm obviously very strongly in favor of this motion.
Well stated. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Right, where are we at? 8.1? So we're into staff reports. 8.1 is a bylaw to appoint a committee of adjustment for the period of November 15th, 2024 to November 14th, 2025. Motion by Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson.
Moved by myself, is recommended by committee of the whole, be resolved, the council of the town of Perth pass bylaw number 5, XX being a bylaw to constitute and appoint a committee of adjustment for the period of November 15th, 2024 to November 14th, 2025, as presented in the report 2024 tab 14.1.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. 8.2, updated terms of reference for climate change advisory panel and the Roof Farm Working Group. We have a motion by Mayor Judy Grant.
Yes, I think you might have skipped 8.1.
No, just did it.
As recommended by the committee of the whole, be it resolved that the council of the town of Perth, 1, pass bylaw 4708-6, being a bylaw to amend the climate change advisory board panel terms of reference, and 2, pass bylaw 5136-1, being a bylaw to amend the Daru Farm Working Group terms of reference as presented in report 2024-COW-14.2.
Questions, if any? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And is also carried unanimously. 8.3, municipal alcohol policy approval request for downtown Heritage Perth BIA's Once Upon a Christmas event, as requested by Kathy McNally. We have a motion to be read by Councillor Waterfield.
As recommended by the committee of the whole, be it resolved that the council of the town of Perth pass bylaw number 4586-2, being a bylaw to provide an exemption from the municipal alcohol policy to allow the serving of alcohol on a contained section of Market Square for the Once Upon a Christmas event taking place on November 23rd, 2024, as presented in report 2024-COW-14.3.
Questions, if any? It's pretty straightforward to me. All in favor? Carried unanimously.
I did have a question.
All right, you're allowed.
I just, in relation to what the event is and the location to the main celebrity that will be there on that evening in the bandstand. I know it's a different event to what Perth Fair used to be. But I have haunting memories of licensed events being right on top of the children's playground there in or at children's events area at the fair. It's a family event. I'm just wondering if this is if we're going to put liquor, is this the ideal location for it?
Through the chair, this is gonna be behind Town Hall, behind Market Square, or behind the band shell. So it's just gonna be a fenced in area that's gonna be limited to just one component. There's a company that they've hired, and it's a mobile bar. and they're gonna set it up, but it's just gonna be within one area.
Thank you, and that obviously has to have the, well, we usually use storm fencing rather than barriers, or is that?
We will probably use the metal barricades, and then it'll be, have a special occasion permit.
Yeah.
That's approved with the demonstrated area that it will have a containment.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so we've already passed that motion. Moving on to 8.4, you might as well stay there, Kathy. Is asking for an agreement with the Perth Lanark Minor Hockey Association. And it was a self-explanatory, report. I have a motion to be read by Councillor Byrd.
Thank you, through the chair. As recommended by the committee of the whole, be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Perth passed bylaw number 5078-2, being a bylaw to provide an exemption from the corporate sponsorship, naming and advertising policy, bylaw number 5078, to allow requests for sponsorship advertising for the 5 change rooms at the Perth and District Community Centre to be made through the Perth Lanark Minor Hockey Association. And to authorise the Mayor and Clerk to execute an agreement with the Perth Lanark Minor Hockey Association as presented in report 2024-CAL-14.4.
Questions? Deputy Mayor McPherson.
What's the amount you expect to get from revenue?
For the Minor Hockey Association, I can't see it being more than $2,000 based on the fact that they have to align with the advertising and sponsorship components that we provide. They can't do it more than what we ask with their own program. So they'll review that with me, but it wouldn't be more than a couple grand a year.
So is that $1,000 a year per room or one in total?
No, in total.
Okay, I appreciate what you're trying to do with minor hockey and things, but I'm not gonna vote in favor only because back in COVID, council of the day waived fees for minor hockey that benefited all the players and families of Lanark and Perth minor hockey. But the town of Perth had to make up the difference. And I just feel that if we're going down the road here in the next few years of we need every cent we can get, and to me, this is town of Perth taxpayers giving our money out to the neighboring communities, even though such a small amount. But we still have to pick up the cost again. And so it's a loss of funds for the town of Perth when we certainly need them. And I hate to do it, but I just have to.
Yeah, through the chair, if I could just maybe provide further context that it's not an existing program that's being done. So they came to us with the idea, and so rather than me saying, oh, that's a good idea, but we have to try to get as much revenue as possible, I didn't feel comfortable then taking it on from a town perspective when it was their idea. So it's not something that we're giving to them, it's just a non-existent program for change from sponsorship.
So that was a point that I was going to make, but you covered it, and that was a good point of clarification. It's not like we are already receiving this money and they're asking us to give them that share of the pie. My question to you, Kathy, is if we say no to this, is it likely that we will take the great idea and run with it or not?
I mean, I would have to get council direction on that. My level of comfort would not be there, only because they came to us with the idea. And when I think about collaboration with community partners, and I just don't know if that would be done in good faith. But that's my own comfort level.
Exactly. Okay. Is everybody clear on this then? That it was the Hockey Association that came to us with their idea to try to raise a little bit more money. By doing this, it's not a diversion of funds that we currently have in the system, so, just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Councilor McCray?
I just want to, point out, that it says being a bylaw to provide an exemption from the corporate sponsorship, naming and advertising policy. So I guess my question is, if another group comes forward with another idea, will they be exempted?
I think that's something we'd have to deal with at the time, and I know where you're going with this, and I mean, we're opening up that whole corporate sponsorship, discussion that we had, and everybody remembers that. And we decided that we wouldn't be naming buildings after people and so on and so forth, unless there was a major corporation coming in and we're gonna spew a bunch of money at us, so this is a minor part of that, right, Kathy?
Yeah, through the chair, there's just a couple of elements within the existing bylaw, with sponsorship that have to do with just some of the wording that's an existing one. It doesn't necessarily align with what we're trying to provide here. So it's not an exemption from the full advertising, and sponsorship, bylaw. Instead, it's an exemption to a certain number of components.
Councilor Waterfield?
Through the chair, I know where the deputy mayor was going in terms of this question. I was gonna ask a very similar one. There are a number of elements playing here. Number one, it was the association's idea. Number two, we're not dealing with large amount of money. However, what I'm concerned about is this setting a precedent for using town infrastructure for future requests by other, third parties. And I think as a council, we need to think beyond this particular request. And we need to say to ourselves, we need to look at this more carefully, because if we grant this, it's not the amount of money. If we get another request, somebody else has another great idea, then all of a sudden this could mushroom. So I would suggest we need to take a step back. We need to look at this in a little bit more of a analytical, future-oriented orientation, and I would like to have staff come back with a recommendation with regards to how do we handle future requests and that we're fair and equitable to all.
CEO?
I share your concerns and the deputy mayors as well. Kathy and I had a lengthy discussion last week on this topic. I share the concern about setting precedent for other organizations coming to request the same thing. I think the situation at the arena might be a little bit different in that we already have an example like this already, where the Perth Blue Wings have forever been have a share of the advertising and are able to, it's on the boards that the Blue Wings sell advertising for and use that to offset their fees. So the precedent hasn't been set at the arena already. Wouldn't necessarily want to see it spread beyond that, but I think in this case, where we're already sharing advertising space and revenue at the arena, I think this could potentially be a logical extension of that, especially for such a nominal amount.
Deputy Mayor and then Mayor, please.
I appreciate that, but my recollection is that, the owner of the Blue Wings at the time, put a significant amount of his own money into the arena and renovated the arena at his own cost, and so the town council today said you put a lot of money of your own into it with the new seats, the screens, everything else they did there, so that was kind of a helping that he helped us out, we helped him out. And I'm not against this, it's just that, you know, part of this whole budget process is we're gonna have to find efficiencies, we're gonna have to find money, and again, when I look back at COVID, I think it was, someone told me it was $30,000 the town waived at the time for minor sports. But all municipalities benefited, but we picked up the cost, and just feeling that, but when it comes time to making these type of decisions, if it means the town of Perth is the one that loses the finances to keep them in, I don't think we should be doing that. So, because we need the money.
Mayor
I agree this is a relatively minor request, but then on the other hand, I think we have to put it into the bigger picture. Like we had a request several months ago, I remember who made the request, but it was to recognize Dr. Ralph Fish and his contribution to minor hockey, and I believe it was to put his name on the arena. So you have to be consistent. I don't remember what we said as response. We weren't going to do it right then, but
Sorry, through the chair, that's the policy that's being exempted here in the recommendation. That's what council passed in response to that request. So council agreed that we weren't gonna name any buildings or anything else after individuals, but that we would consider it for corporate sponsorship. The request for the advertising in the change rooms would be naming it after the announcer, Jim Bolt, would be selling it to local businesses to put their name on.
So the request in regard to Dr. Fish, it's not gonna go through, even though he contributed so much to the arena and to minor hockey.
Yes,
But if a corporation came in, let's say, hey man, we want our name on the arena, since they're corporate, we would go ahead and say, sure, we'll take it.
through the chair, yes, that's what council decided in the corporate sponsorship naming and advertising policy.
Kathy, you comment?
Just to address the deputy mayor's concerns in terms of, revenues, I don't dismiss that, and we had lengthy conversations, Michael and I did. We did make it a 2-year term, because it's also the end of the term for council with the agreement on community grants. So it was aligning with, that's when council can look at this in the future in terms of how do we want to move forward with, revenue costs, whether it's revenue costs or community organizations and the council's approach to it. So that's just why I felt more comfortable moving forward with it from a timeline for 2 years.
Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? I'm gonna support it as well. That's 2. And those against? So it's defeated, 5-2. Thanks, Kathy. So we're gonna move forward then to 8.5. Grant application through the Ontario Trillium Foundation Grow Grant Program for museum programming and exhibition growth. Again, forwarded by Kathy McNally. We have a motion to be read by Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson.
Moved by myself as recommended by committee of the whole, be resolved, the council of the town of Perth authorize the director of community services to submit a grant application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation Grow Grant Program for an upset limit of $600,000. With implementation of further museum programming and planning as presented in report L 14.5.
Any discussion? You don't want us to do it?
No, I want us to do it, but I think, and I don't even know if this is allowed, so I'm going to say it. And that is, if we are able to get the Ontario Trillium Foundation Grow Grant Program, is there any opportunity to generate revenue through that, through specific like March break programs, summer camps, those types of things? Are we even allowed to do that? I'm just asking.
All right, good question, Kathy.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a great question. So what we want to do with this grant application is likely the hiring of an individual to help enhance our programming so that we can bring more opportunities to have people come to the museum and pay for programming, as well as bring the museum out to the community as well, so that we can also increase the awareness about the museum and obviously the history that's beyond the four walls of the building, but really it is to enhance and maintain revenues that come from the museum.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried unanimously. Brings us to 9.1, we've got the CAO and Director of Departmental Updates. We've all read them. Does anybody have a question for any of these reports? We'll start with you, Mayor Brown.
Thank you. This is under environmental services and it's a page that says future operations. So items include lagoon internal structure replacement. Wonder if you could just fill us in. I know we applied for a grant. Go back on information. What is where?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of that. First time it was.
First, yeah, so we've also applied for a grant to upgrade the lagoon system, am I correct?
No.
No, so I'm asking this question, what are the plans for the lagoon? Where does this fit into the whole plans for the lagoon?
For the fourth cell of the second. So as expansion is needed with development, then we would proceed with that fourth cell of the second.
the internal structure replacement is between cells of the existing structure and is part of the maintenance plan.
Question for Grant or anyone else?
Well, actually, Director O'Hania, if I may through the chair, in relation to ongoing operations, and it's really under an enhancement. In relation to the waste management program, we have for a long time been receiving, it's been visual, I've noticed it myself. It's been commented before in the past by other people. Construction waste was not being really monitored. And that has changed recently. I believe Martin took the lead on this. And we are not now taking as much construction waste, and we are being more careful of monitoring it. Am I right in saying that?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah. That would means that we have in the past been risking the lifespan of our waste management project, the efficiency of it. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
In a lot of townships surrounding us, they have other mechanisms in place, which is why people are coming to us and giving an address in Perth. And one of those would be, for an example, you have to show a construction building permit for an address in our municipality for that construction waste. And that can be followed up. And I know that Martin has started doing that in some cases, but not requesting. Is there anything the town can do to extend bylaws that would help us get on top of that and give the right authority to Martin and to the staff there to pursue, perhaps even the bylaw officers pursue?
Through the chair, absolutely. There's a couple of responses I would have to that. The landfill site proper is an asset identified through an asset management plan, but what is not evaluated is the airspace or the capacity of the landfill site. So you recall we invested several $1 million expanding that capacity of that airspace, the ability to landfill waste. And I feel that that space is equivalent to safe water or safe sewer. It's part of the utility that makes us a community, and because we are one of the few local municipalities that have a landfill, it's very key that we protect it. So building on your question, one of our challenges at the site is contractors building and bringing in material. Though their business may be in Perth, the material that they are sourcing is not from Perth. So what we are looking at staff level is re-implementing the need for a building or demolition permit and working with those contractors to verify that material is coming from Perth. Having the businesses in Perth doesn't necessarily gain you capacity. Our CFA is very clear at the landfill site, and it says very clearly at the front gate through the provincial document that all waste entering the site must originate from the borders of the municipality of town Perth. So it's very clear, and we can ideally find if we are knowingly allowing material to come in inside. One of the measures that we did a few years ago was we changed our operating hours to match the other municipalities, because when they were closed, the contractors by default will bring the material to Perth. So we made that direct change and aligned our landfill sites on Take Valley and Dartmouth County. So that was the active measure we did. So I guess in closing, we're working with reviewing our current bylaws, and we're looking at implementing those changes to make it more rigid as you use the landfill site.
Thank you.
Any other questions for any one of the directors from their reports? Councilor Waterfield.
Through the chair to our CAO. I note in your report, you met with the local county CAOs, which I know you do on a regular basis. I'm just curious as to how often the topic of joint purchasing through economies of scale are discussed, and do we have any specific agreements in place with local municipalities at the moment? With the budget cycle just around the corner, we're always looking for ways to save money. And surely there are opportunities in terms of joint purchasing and so forth with joint municipalities. So I'm wondering, number one, do we have any in place? And number two, are there any ongoing discussions with regards to that topic? Because I'm sure other municipalities are feeling the same pinch.
Through the chair, we meet quarterly, it's an ongoing discussion about purchasing. Brian's on the edge of his seat, I'm not sure if he wants to contribute as well. Every year that when the county does its tendering, I think every lower tier has an opportunity to join in on certain projects where it makes sense. We've talked about, and we have shared certain staff and services like building inspectors and other things amongst municipalities. We're doing that right now with two of our neighbors. I believe in the past, there's been joint tendering on benefits and other things. Sometimes it makes sense, other times it does not. Nearly every meeting, we're discussing something or floating ideas to see where it works and where it doesn't. I'll let Brian chime in.
Through the chair, we're a member of both Canoe and LAS, which are EMO, joint purchasing programs, so, they basically go out and they tender commonly used items, and then we have the option of using the tendering process on a provincial level, so actually quite a bit broader than just the county level.
So through the chair, so what I'm hearing is that we're maximizing all of these opportunities. I'd be interested as a counselor getting some data with regards to specifically what we're doing with regards to joint purchasing and the savings. As long as it doesn't take too much staff time, but I appreciate the answer. It's a little top level and I wouldn't mind just kind of getting some meat potatoes as to what are we doing and where are we saving money.
I can do something.
Yeah.
Report that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair, back to Brian. Does this include insurance as well?
No, it does not include insurance, and insurance, the dominant force in the insurance is the underwriters. And there's very few underwriters that do municipal insurance any longer. And therefore, when we go out and get tenders for insurance, you're really only looking at a couple of firms.
Okay, got it. I think you told me that before, but I thought I'd ask again. Because that's what I need.
All right, any other questions for any of our directors or any of the reports before you? Seeing none then, we don't need a motion, we've, right? We don't need a motion.
No.
So that moves us to new business. Does anybody have any new business to bring forward?
I meant to say under staff reports, I certainly want to give a shout out to Hollywood Trophy and his team there and Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Everybody wants to know who Andy is, so I said, he's Andy, but I thought it was a great program by the staff. It was really good.
Yeah.
Under new business, I just want to make mention, I mentioned it to a couple of the councilors at the start of the meeting. I couldn't help but notice when I was walking into the building earlier today, coming up the ramp, that how badly the limestone front of the building is deteriorating. It's literally falling apart. We spent a lot of money, as everybody recalls, just a very few years ago, having a lot of the top 4 or 5 courses of block or brick or whatever it was repointed and improved. This specifically is more of a larger surface, although I did see some of the pointing falling off as well. I'm only asking that perhaps through the CAO, staff take a better look at that and identify how serious it is and whether we should be taking action sooner rather than later to make sure that it doesn't get to a point where it's going to be really, really expensive. And given the fact that this is such a historic building, I think it needs attention really soon. All right. So if there's no other new business, our next meeting will be the regular committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday, November the 5th. I will be on vacation, and unfortunately I cannot make it, but it'll be chaired by Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson. We have a special committee of the whole meeting to deal with the review of the draft budget on November 19th at 11 a.m. Again, Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson will be the chair. And a second meeting should November 26th at 4 p.m. for the draft official plan meeting, again with Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson as the chair. At this time, I hope if there's any of the media that are listening, if you're listening out there in media land, are there any questions?
Brian Turner, no question.
Thank you, Brian. We have no closed session, there's none scheduled, therefore, number 14 is redundant. I would ask that Councillor McCray read our adjournment.
Thank you. That the committee of the whole meeting held on October the 8th, 2024, be adjourned at 7:04 p.m.
All in favor? Carried unanimously.